Hello and welcome to the program. I am DEJI360 EPP. Now, in what many have described as the most highly anticipated governorship election in 2021, the Anambra State governorship election has finally come and gone. The candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, AIGBE, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, has emerged winner of the election. So it means AIGBE will continue to govern the southeastern state for the next 4 years from March 17th, 2022 now, when Professor Soludo will be sworn in as governor. Don't forget, AIGBE has actually been in charge of that state since 2006, I should say, when Peter Obi, of course, was governor. Now, with a total of 112,229 votes, Soludo beat his rivals, Valentine Ozigbo of the People's Democratic Party, who trailed behind him with 53,807 votes, and Andy Uba of the All Progressives Congress, who got 43,285 votes, coming third in the race. Now, while electoral observers have judged the election to be relatively peaceful, free and fair, voter turnout on election day has been a big talking point. Just slightly above 10% of registered voters turned out to vote. And if you factor that number, if you factor the number of persons who actually voted for Soludo, who won that election, now the number is just around 5%. Now that's quite abysmal. But then Anambra State has a history of low voter turnout on election day. This, however, would be about the lowest so far. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has now presented a certificate of return to the governor-elect of the state, that's Chukwuma Soludo, but it would seem that the last may not have been heard from Soludo's main rival. Andy Uba of the All Progressives Congress APC has rejected the result and has said he would be heading to court to challenge it. Now, this is despite the fact that the president, Muhammadu Buhari, who's also of the APC, has congratulated Soludo, and with even the Minister of Labor and Employment, who is a strong APC member from that state, has also congratulated Soludo as well. One man, though, who may not be heading to court is the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Valentine Ozigbo. He has congratulated Soludo on his victory. Take a look.
Hello, this is Valentine Ozigbo sending a message of congratulations to Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo on emerging the governor-elect of Anambra State. I want to join thousands and millions of Indian Anambra and wishing him well. Our Anambra Chapter manifesto, the philosophy, is the strongest messaging you can find in this 2021 race. Therefore, I can't but be thankful to Almighty God and to many other people who God used to get us to where we are today. There are a lot of you who believed in us too early without even knowing who we are. And some of you came much later. I honestly, sincerely thank you and wish Anambra well. And in all this, therefore, we are going to take steps that we will use to address the need for us to have a better platform, a better Anambra, and a better future.
All right, let's discuss this election further now. I'm now being joined on the program by Omoru AIGBE, who joins us from Abuja. I also have joining us from Benin, IGBOELI, who is a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on the program. Let me start with you, Omoru AIGBE. You observed that election. You witnessed almost everything that happened in the build-up to the election and election day. Give me your overall assessment of the election.
Overall assessment is that the election came and is now behind us. Arguably, many people never thought the election would hold. That the election even had, it's like we just like to be thankful. Even the electoral management body, INEC, I'm not too sure they were certain, like confident level, that the election will hold. I'm just too sure that they probably wanted to just try something, and then they discovered that the progress was going on. You realize that on election, you may recall that on election money, electoral officials who have been trained are declined to serve on that money and to serve as officials in that election, and that was a huge blow on the process. And of course, that vehicle owners who had earlier agreed with INEC to help deploy materials to the various locations also declined to move materials that money. And that was also a huge blow to the process. So what INEC eventually did, many people will say is a miracle. I also believe it's a miracle because the election did head only in Iyala and in 126 polling units across the state where polling did not now happen. But in all honesty, that the election eventually head in Anambra was a sound one. That does not mean that the election did not have its own talking point. It was an election that was dominated with fake news that increased the fear among the populace. Voters were skeptical about whether or not they were going to show up to vote, whether or not they were going to be killed, whether or not they were going to be attacked, including those vehicle owners, the ad hoc personnel who eventually pulled out. I'm sure by the time the election was over, all those folks who pulled out, particularly ad hoc staff and the vehicle owners who pulled out, would have been very angry with themselves that, wow, they wanted to frustrate the election, but the election went on as planned, and now we have a governor-elect. That's congratulations to the people of Anambra, Idimbo, in the Anambra.
Now, in terms of transparency, how would you rate the election? Would you say it was free and fair and that the outcome reflects the choice of the people, so to speak?
So I will take it from the last point you made. The outcome did high level of confidence, did align with the choice of the people. If it was not the choice of the people, I trust that there would have been some revolt from among the population. There was I'm sure you'll see a video that trended the night of the election, and following after that, a woman who rejected 5,000 naira from a political party and eventually voted for their choice. And that is the weakness that went around in that state. It was like this was the position of the people. Let's not make mistakes that someone is going to court means that we should say shouldn't go to court. It's a person's constitutional right to approach the court to say, well, I think that the election was not free and fair, and I think that there were misgivings, I think that there were other things. Yes, that the election happened, and that over 200,000 people showed up to vote, 10%. We were expecting less than 5%. People even say if it's 1%, they will declare election. They will declare the result. That we had 10%, over 10%, was a huge success. Huge success. I can tell you for free that a day before the election, 2 days before the election, it was almost impossible that the election was going to go ahead. But for the will, of course, the security played their role, and we're confident that we're going ahead with the election. They didn't want a constitutional debacle eventually in the election in Anambra State, which may be worse than where we were coming from. And I think, yeah, transparency, in terms of transparency level, the beavers did improve that process. Anyone that didn't have, they go through the beavers. Yes, the next question will be the beavers.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that because we have a lot to talk about as far as the beavers is concerned. But let me just pause you there and go over to Arinze. Arinze, your candidate has said he's going to court to challenge the outcome of the election. He feels the election was not transparent, that a lot of things went wrong with the election. What exactly would be your own take on it?
Thanks for having me here. Let me shock you first of all. Senator Anambra has not made up his mind on what to do yet. What you saw was fake news. There is no news credited to Senator Anambra that he will be going to court. For the now, Senator Anambra is studying the results. He's studying the processes. He's taking advice. And by Saturday or Sunday morning, we will know Senator Anambra's position. So that is the case. Senator Anambra has not said he will go to court. What you saw there was fake news. Senator Anambra, yes, is not satisfied with the process or the aftermath of the elections. There were a lot of hiccups and there were a lot of issues, which if you allow me, I will explain. But Senator Anambra has not said he will go to court. By Saturday, Sunday, I can assure you.
Yeah, okay. Now, I mean, this is quite interesting coming from you because, I mean, you are one of the officials of the of the party in the state, and you're very close, of course, to the Anambra campaign organization. So this is quite interesting coming from you, and we'll just wait and see how it all unfolds. But tell me about some of the issues you and your party have with that election.
Yes, for example, the BVACs, some of the places that gave a huge voting result to Professor Chukwuma Soludo were not done with the BVACs. You can do your investigation. When the BVACs were not functioning, the INEC, the EOs there were threatened. And what they had to do was, the supervising polling officials were threatened. So what they now did was they now did manual voting. That is one of the problems we have with this election.
Are you in essence, sorry to interject here, are you in essence saying that in places where where AIGBE won, the beavers wasn't used, and in places where your candidate would probably have done well, or where your candidate won, that the beavers was used?
In a number of places, for example, in the present governor's town of IGBOELI, the BVACs were not used. We have this in evidence. The BVACs were not used. Then you should also remember that the Orumba North EO,
that the beavers wasn't used in quite a number of places where there were hiccups. Yes. I mean, that's for sure. We know that.
But in places where APC had strongholds, when we knew that the APC was strong, in places like Abatete, Oba, and other strongholds of the APC, they insisted on using the BVACs. This alone pushed away a number of our voters.
Now, this is the question. This is the question. Why would, for instance, why would your voters choose not to vote, for instance, just because the beavers wasn't working, and then the people who came to vote for supposedly for other candidates waited? I'm just trying to reconcile that fact. That why do you think anybody would target, say? I mean, how would INEC, for instance, know where your stronghold is and then deploy beavers that are not functional to such strongholds?
In 2013, if you remember, INEC used it with AIGBE, targeted Idemili North and South, and did not send the real voting materials there. If you remember, in 2013, when Chris Ngige was running for governor, so it was simple. Where we had our voting strength, they insisted on using the BVACs. But in places where AIGBE had voting strength, in places where they got humongous and huge results, AIGBE did not rely on the BVACs. They got the SPOs there to allow everybody there vote. That automatically tampers with the credibility of the election, because the purpose of the BVACs is to capture real voters. So in a situation
I'm just wondering how the beavers would know which voter is for APC and which is for AIGBE, for instance.
I'm giving you that IGBOELI was the stronghold of AIGBE. So there is no, so when they found out that the BVACs were not functioning, or when they decided not to use the BVACs, they now allowed voters. Because that is their stronghold. Okay, let me ask you the question. Why were elections not held in Abatete, in Oba, Akuku? Elections didn't hold there.
And all those are your strongholds.
And that's why our deputy governor is strong. But instead of Kafo, it's from Idemili South. And elections did not take place there. Where we had other strongholds, the BVACs they insisted, even when the BVACs were malfunctioning. But in places where AIGBE had their own strongholds, where they were AIGBE chieftains, they allowed manual voting. That automatically questions the credibility of that election.
All right, I'm going to come to you. Let me go to... Okay.
Let me chip you one thing.
Okay.
Let me chip you one thing. In Orumba North, the EO that came and told us how he was threatened and how he was forced to sign a result. That automatically should call to question whatever results are coming in.
Was it the EO there or the collation officer? Because the EO actually said there was no problem.
The collation officer, who is the final, who is versed with presenting the result, told the whole world in live camera that he was threatened. And yet,
but wasn't that issue addressed? Because even though the collation officer said he was threatened and that he signed the document under duress, but
yes,
it was also established that the results from the polling units were not affected at all. So what the collation officer complained about was the collation of results, which is different. And so INEC had to set up another committee now to take the results from the polling units from Urumba North and computed everything, and eventually the ABGA candidate won that local government area.
The moment there is a problem with the process, the moment the collation officer is telling you that he was forced to accept the results, it means that there were complaints from certain polling units.
I understand. I understand you, but let me just pause you there, and let me just pause you there, and let's discuss more on this issue of the beavers. Mr. AIGBE, look, whether you like it or not, the moment you begin to have problems with your machines, I mean, the moment, for instance, problems started coming up about the beavers not working in some areas, that was well, if you like, a recipe for the kind of what complaints we're getting now, because there's no way that you would not have this kind of reaction, because politicians would definitely say that it was a design to skim them out, and that's exactly what we're having. So in this case, it's I mean, isn't it? Shouldn't INEC have made sure that these beavers machines were working before deploying them?
Okay, so just to make some clarity, the beavers did work. Fine, there were some technical issues in some location, which is a handful of them, and that was why INEC had to extend the voting period to 4 p.m. on election day. If you remember, the guideline says it's 2:30. It's supposed to be 8:30 to 2:30, but when information came in from all over, including from our situation room, our observers deployed reported cases of malfunctioning or the slow pace the beavers was going. INEC then extended that polling was going to be extended to 4 p.m. The idea was to allow for interrogation of the beavers, which happened. So after that period between 2 and 4, and don't also forget there were late arrival material, so it then pulled back voting to some to 8 o'clock, 6 p.m. in the evening after the 4 p.m. because the law, the guideline required that everyone on the queue, as at the time of the closure of the voting, will be allowed to vote, which means everyone on queue by 4 p.m. were all allowed to vote. There was immediate correction. It was swift. However, it delayed almost like 3 hours. 3 hours will be big in an election. But for any polling unit where the beavers was not used, there were reported cases of manual accreditation without the use of beavers. The guideline says that those polling units will not be counted, and that's exactly what has happened. So in polling units where the beavers were virtually not used, were never added up to the figure. Again, you're going to say, well, they were disenfranchised. Yeah, you can't have everything. I'm not making case for INEC, but I'm telling you that the beavers problem was the least of the problem that INEC needed to tackle in that election. There were all manner of other issues. I just told you about the logistical challenge. Those who were trained ab initio, you know, INEC had to recruit ad hoc observer up to the eve of election. Probably the people who were handling those beavers were not properly in good mood, but when they got adequate technical support, eventually they ran the processes effectively. And that was what you saw in Iyala local government election, that there was an upscale in the use of the beavers, which means the people who were actually trained or who had the skills were the one using it. Within 2, 3, 4 minutes, a voter had gone through the beavers compared to where they had to struggle on Saturday. Yes, this is the very first time that the beavers will be deployed in a statewide election. INEC had earlier deployed the beavers in Isoko, one small election, in the House of Assembly by-election. It was just a small election, so all eyes weren't there, even though the beavers recorded a huge percentile. But coming to Anambra, it did mess up at the beginning, but it quickly recovered. Well, if my colleague on the other side who is speaking has all of the full details and is sure that those things happen, it could be a basis for the kind of interrogation we talked earlier, but it's good to hear that it also alluded that the candidate of the APC had not made a categorical statement about approaching the court, even though the one we saw was from the media organization. So maybe, like I said, it may be fake news. So if you recall, in 2015 election, the first time ever the smart card was deployed, we had this challenge, this technical challenge. And it was worse then because it was a general election. But now that we are able to solve the Beavers challenge in a small election compared to the general election, I think we are properly on the trajectory of an electronic introduction, full electronic introduction in an electoral landscape. Anambra election, the Beavers was a small percent of the challenge, and I repeat, the Beaver struggle was a small percent of the issues in that state. And I repeat, a way of emphasis, that if you had you needed about 26,000 ad hoc staff, and you are able to secure about 18 or 17 or 16, and you have to then manipulate by reducing the number of staff that goes into a polling unit to do the job of 3 or 4 people, that was huge. And they needed to then deal with human resources, vehicular, logistic operation in solving the debacle that would have faced in Anambra election. In fact, would have been talking about an Anambra election that never had at this material time. Would have been talking about Anambra election that could not go on because there were no resources to make. There were no human resource. There was no vehicular resources to help it go on. Would have been talking about an election that is inconclusive in a large scale. Not even that it was inconclusive with just one local government election. It would have been large scale. 126 polling units across the 20 local government, polling did not take place, arguably due to logistics and other things. In Iyala, the way the deployment went, I'm sure there were several other issues in terms of insecurity that was big in Iyala, that INEC need to go ahead. It's like going into a likely conflict and you go in. You know there's a conflict. This is a conflict situation. You went in. But all of those conflict situations and all of the news we had pre-election were largely disinformation. It was aimed to disinform the Anambra voters. Right. And eventually the disinformation worked. For example, on Thursday, while on the ground in Oka, we got a voice note that the group is asking that all hotel owners should discharge every guest in their hotel, and that was fake. There were a lot of fake news that was in and around the Anambra election.
So usually fake news usually comes with with elections, and so it's not surprising at all. But we have to wrap up because time is fast spent. Arinze, for your party, where does your party go from here?
Yes.
The reason I asked you that is because I think this is the third time now your party would be making an attempt to win a governorship election in that state, if not the fourth time, and you've not been able to achieve it. So where does the party go from here as far as Anambra State is concerned?
Everything lies with our principal, Senator Anambra, and I can assure you, before the coming of Monday, we will know the latest stand. The APC remains a viable party and a viable opposition to wrest power. The fact that we have not taken power does not mean that we're done for. After all, the President Muhammadu Buhari attempted to become president 4 times before he eventually became president. And you have that in political history. So we are looking at the results. We are looking at where we felt that the people of Anambra were disenfranchised, cheated, were not allowed to express their own inclinations, and hopefully we may be approaching the courts. Yes, but even if we don't do that, the APC will remain a viable voice of opposition, will remain a viable voice for the people, and will stand intact with the Anambra people. So there's no need there's no cause for alarm, no need to regret. We're a viable opposition party.
All right, gentlemen, Just before I close it, let me quickly ask you this, Omori. I think you'll be in the best position to answer this. For the former governor of that state, Peter Obi, who before now used to loom large over that state, this must no doubt be a very huge blow for his party, despite all his efforts. The first time that they lost the election, he led the party, they lost the election. This time, leading the party to the election again, they've lost it, getting just around just a meager 53,000 votes. Somehow you think this might be the end of the road for him politically as far as the PDP is concerned in that state?
No, not at all. But this should be an end of the road to godfathers in position of candidates. Nothing wrong about being a godfather, but when you impose candidates on people, it has its consequence. If you see what happened, or you follow the trajectory in the primaries of the PDP, a lot of the candidates who were aggrieved left for other parties. And imagine that they are worked in one accord. I didn't quite see the role played by the female senator who is alleged to be a bulldozer in this election. We didn't see an effect. Many of the people in the PDP who felt aggrieved just pulled out without necessarily decamping or supporting another party, but they just pulled out. And that impacted greatly on even the APC and the PDP. For Peter Obi, I think it's now time for a recalculation that whoever is going to emerge, let the process come in very handy. But this is also good news for the Electoral Act amendment process. The Senate has okayed a direct primaries, so it will be very difficult right now for imposition of candidates going ahead in election. We will expect that maybe if you check what happened in the APC, there were over 250,000 people who voted for the candidate of the party at the primaries, but that it got less than 50,000 votes is also an issue of concern. So it's not time for politicians to be to interrogate their process, their selection process. You don't just throw up candidates in a way that mesmerize the process. That does not mean that AIGBE didn't also have the challenge with the position. But the good news for AIGBE was that the Supreme Court quickly decided on their case, and that was fantastic for them. If the Supreme Court had not decided, maybe we will not be talking about this story. People already saw that the AIGBE case had been decided. The PDP was still hanging, the APC was still hanging. But again, the voice of the people have been properly heard from all we saw from our observers across the length and breadth of the state. Good news for those who won, but I think that it's better they all come across, work together to make Anambra a better state. Anambra is not a violent state, and it cannot be a violent state. The people, now election is over, the Anambrians need to sit together and develop their state and make the state to be the truly the Dubai of Africa that they all talked about during the debate. All
right, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Omori AIGBE, thank you very much for coming on the program. And of course, AIGBOELI, thank you very much, and we wish your party all the best of luck. We'll wait and see what course of action your party takes. You were saying something, Arinze?
You should have asked me my thoughts on Peter Obi.
Okay, okay, very quickly now, tell me.
He's a great man, and there's nothing wrong with what he has done. He only wants what he feels is his own version of good governance to happen in Anambra State. I have always criticized Peter, but he's a great person, he's a great figure. And this is not the end of the road for Peter. He still has a lot to offer in the Anambra and Nigeria. So I would have just loved it to have my own version, even though I remain one of his biggest critics.
That's fair enough. Thank you very much for your time. We'll take a short break now, and we'll be right back to continue our discussion on the Anambra State governorship election. Stay with us.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, Dissect it so that you can understand it. Use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.